This is podcast psychology. Have you ever noticed a strange kind of quiet, almost an emptiness maybe, that can settle in after a really intimate experience?
hmm
It's something I think a lot of people feel, the subtle sense that something shifted, maybe even been lost. But it's not really something we talk about much.
Not usually, no. It feels quite private,
Right. So today we're going to do a deep dive into this feeling. We'll be looking at it through the lens of, well, Carl Jung's psychological
which
insights.
is a really rich perspective for this.
Definitely. We'll explore what might be happening sort of beneath the surface in our minds, our energy, our psyche in those connection moments, and importantly, what comes after.
Yeah, the aftermath.
The goal really is to get a better handle on these often unseen bonds we form, and maybe more importantly, how you can move towards a greater sense of inner freedom.
Well, what's fascinating right away is how Jung saw intimacy. It wasn't just physical for him, or even just emotional in the way we normally think. He saw it as deeply psychological, and you could even say spiritual, something that leaves a real lasting imprint on our unconscious mind.
An imprint. Like it doesn't just vanish when the moment's over.
Exactly. It's not fleeting. Think about maybe a really vivid dream. The exact images fade pretty quickly, right?
Sure.
But the feeling, that mood or atmosphere, that can stick with you for ages.
Yeah.
Jung saw intimacy having a similar kind of resonance, but deeper.
Okay, let's unpack that idea. A lasting unconscious imprint. Because usually the focus is so much on the immediate stuff, the sensations, the emotions right then and there.
Hmm.
The thought that something keeps echoing inside us like that is, well, it's quite something. And Hume also said relationships aren't just random. Yeah, there's always this deeper unconscious stuff going on.
Precisely. If you connect it to his whole view of the psyche, the unconscious is always influencing us, especially in relationships. He talked a lot about unconscious dynamics and, crucially, psychological projections.
Projections.
Okay, they're always active when we connect intimately. It's like there's a hidden script running, affecting how we see the other person and how we interact.
Right, psychological projection. That feels key here. Can you explain what Jung meant by that? And how it connects to this emptiness feeling we're talking about?
Sure. So projection, put simply, is when we unconsciously take our own thoughts, feelings, maybe desires, even our old wounds,
Yeah.
and we kind of pin them onto someone else.
Oh.
Like when we fall in love, often we're not really seeing the actual person in all their complexity. We project an idealized image onto them.
An ideal.
Yeah, a set of expectations, maybe even an unconscious hope they'll fix something broken inside us. So that post-intimacy void, that emptiness, sometimes it signals that the projection is fading.
The idealized image isn't holding up anymore.
Exactly. The other person isn't fitting the picture we painted. And we're left not just with the loss of them, perhaps, but the loss of that projected part of ourselves, that ideal we briefly saw reflected back.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like seeing a reflection of something we desperately want or need in ourselves, but we see it on them. And when the connection cools, the reflection vanishes, and we're just left with the original yearning.
You've got it. And the source material also mentioned something interesting, that this feeling can hit harder for people who tend to uh, give too much in relationships.
Yeah, why would that be?
Well, it highlights something critical. Often, people who overgive might be, again, unconsciously, trying to fill a hole that's already there, an inner void.
Right.
They pour enormous energy into the other person, hoping that connection will somehow make them feel complete, feel whole. So when the relationship shifts, or even just after one intense encounter, that underlying emptiness they were papering over,
It comes rushing back.
it resurfaces, yeah. And it can feel even more profound because so much energy went out. But the root issue, the inner need, wasn't really addressed. It's like putting a tiny bandage on a deep-cut temporary cover, but doesn't heal the wound itself.
Interesting. Like the relationship was a temporary external fix for something needing internal attention. Now, moving beyond the purely psychological, the source also mentioned energetic connections, these invisible bonds. What's the idea there?
Yeah, this is where it gets even more subtle, perhaps.
Yeah.
The idea is that beyond our minds and emotions, intimacy can forge actual energetic links. Sometimes people call them invisible threads.
Okay, energetic threads.
Think of it less like a physical rope, more like the lingering emotional resonance after a really powerful concert or event. You know how a strong memory can shift your mood? These energetic imprints are thought to subtly influence your emotional state long after physical contact ends. It's just a kind of sharing or exchange of vital energy.
And some connections feel good, balanced, while others...
Others can feel draining, exactly, leaving one or both people feeling depleted.
So these energetic cords, they can actually persist, even after you've physically separated. That might explain why someone feels, I don't know, a lingering presence or this unexplained heaviness after a breakup, even if logically they know it's over.
Precisely. Think about someone who gets out of a really toxic relationship. Intellectually, they know it's the right move, they feel relief, perhaps.
Yeah.
But months later, they still feel emotionally drained, almost pulled back.
Right.
That could be a sign that the energetic bond, that invisible thread, is still somehow active, still drawing on their resources in some subtle way.
Wow, that's a really vivid picture, these invisible threads still connecting us. Now, another big Jungian idea mentioned was the shadow self. How does that play into this feeling of emptiness?
Ah, the shadow. Yes. This really asks us, what are we truly looking for in these connections? The shadow, for Jung, holds all the parts of ourselves we tend to ignore, disown, repress.
Our insecurities, wounds, fears, that sort of thing.
Exactly. All that stuff we'd rather not look at. And these shadow aspects, they often pop up right in the middle of our intimate relationships, usually disguised as unconscious expectations or deep, unmet needs.
So the emptiness we feel afterwards could be partly a direct encounter with these unacknowledged parts of ourselves when the other person isn't there to distract us anymore.
Precisely. That emptiness can be a really stark, maybe uncomfortable reminder of an inner void we were hoping the other person would fill. When the connection dims, we're left alone with those unmet needs, those shadow parts. Think about the fear of abandonment, for example. The absence of the other person can powerfully reactivate old wounds around that fear, making the emptiness feel incredibly intense, like a raw nerve being touched.
It sounds like intimacy acts like a powerful mirror then, reflecting not just the other person, but our own inner world too, including the bits we try to keep hidden. The source really emphasized that, didn't it? That our feelings after intimacy often reflect hidden bits of our unconscious.
That's a really central insight, yes. Our attachments often form not just because we like the person, but because they unconsciously symbolize something vital to us.
Like what?
Maybe an ideal we're reaching for, or maybe they seem to answer a deep-seated longing we have. Or perhaps they even represent an escape from some fear we carry inside.
And when the relationship ends or just cools off, the symbolic mirror disappears. And we have to face our own reflection again. Maybe seeing that inner solitude we were trying to mask. So, okay, if we recognize this pattern in ourselves, looking outside for completion, what's the path towards, well, more emotional independence? Because the goal isn't to avoid relationships altogether, is it?
Absolutely not. The aim isn't isolation. It's about cultivating wholeness within ourselves first, so we can engage in connections consciously, not desperately.
Connecting from a place of fullness, not lack.
Exactly. Freeing ourselves from that recurring emptiness involves learning how to love, how to connect without losing our own center, and also becoming more aware of the energetic side of things, the impact these connections have.
The source talked about this continuous exchange of fragments of ourselves in relationships and how intense connections create lasting bonds. How do we navigate that without getting drained or lost?
Well, the first step is simply becoming aware of these bonds, recognizing they exist. Then, instead of immediately fighting the emptiness or rushing to fill it with someone new, pause.
Observe.
Yes. Observe what that emptiness might be telling you about yourself. What parts of you got activated in that relationship? What unmet needs were you maybe trying to satisfy through the other person without realizing it?
Using the feeling as information.
Precisely. Understanding this helps you start reclaiming your inner space, taking responsibility for your own emotional well-being again.
And are there practical things we can do to gently release those invisible imprints or energetic ties that don't feel helpful anymore?
Yes, definitely. There are various recentering practices. Visualization can be surprisingly powerful here.
How so?
You can say, imagine those energetic connections as threads of light. Then gently visualize yourself releasing them. Not angrily, but maybe with gratitude for any lessons learned, while letting go of the lingering energetic pull. Also, things like introspective writing, journaling about the experience, your feelings can be hugely clarifying. Meditation helps quiet the mind and reconnect you to your own core. And sometimes just consciously choosing to spend quiet time alone, grounding yourself, can make a big difference in reclaiming your space and resetting your energetic boundaries.
So it sounds like it really boils down to shifting our whole perspective on what relationships are for, moving away from seeking completion in someone else.
And moving towards a model of two whole individuals choosing to share their journey.
Exactly.
Intimacy as a meeting, a sharing, not a fusion where you lose yourself or expect the other person to fill your gaps.
Precisely. And the foundation for that is cultivating a deep, authentic connection with yourself first. That allows for balanced, enriching exchanges. It's also about accepting that connections will leave imprints. That's just part of being human.
Right, it's normal. Yeah. The focus shifts then from trying to cling on or desperately forget to integrating the lessons learned from those imprints. And ultimately, you can reframe that feeling of emptiness. See it not just as a void, but maybe as an invitation.
An invitation for inner exploration.
Exactly, an opportunity for self-discovery. It can actually be incredibly empowering when you look at it that way.
So the core message here, it seems, is that what we often chase externally, what we seek in others,
Hmm.
it's usually a reflection of something we need to find and cultivate within ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yes.
And understanding that, really getting it, can transform relationships. They stop being potential sources of emptiness and become, ideally, balanced, enriching experiences, leading to expansion, not a void.
Hmm. It encourages that inward turn, doesn't it? To
Yes.
engage with those deeper parts of ourselves that might be asking for attention, for integration.
So for you listening, maybe consider this next time. Could those feelings of emptiness, the quiet that sometimes follows intimacy, could they actually be an invitation?
A call to dialogue, perhaps.
Yeah, an invitation to a deeper inner dialogue, a chance to explore those hidden corners of yourself and maybe start a really profound journey of self-discovery. It's definitely something we're thinking about.